Well, good day, everyone, everywhere, and special greetings to all those seated in heavenly places in Jesus. The name of this program is Cross the Border, and this is my Bible study program. And we are in the book of Daniel. We landed in chapter 11. And Daniel chapter 11, as I said yesterday, is like a quarter of the Revelation, except without a lot of the symbology and the signs that come with the revelation. But it covers about a quarter of the time that the revelation covers. So far, the revelation, being given to the church about 95 AD, has been unfolding over the last nearly 2,000 years. And of course, we're near the end of that chronology in the Revelation. Well, here Daniel gets a chronology in Daniel chapter 11 of the last about 500 years of his nation and the time determined, as we read about there in chapter 9 in the 70 weeks prophecy, that the 70 weeks or 490 years were determined. But when Daniel gets this, it's sometime before, it's still during the captivity that he gets this vision of the things, the machinations of the nations in and about and around God's people, or God's national church on earth, and that have to do with God's people, filling up that era until the end of the nation. And we got to, where did we get to? I think we got to, we got to verse 5. We had already covered the first 4 verses of Daniel 11, verses 1 through 4 we've already covered. And also, I have to say that using Matthew Henry's commentary here is probably the most concise and complete commentary, especially on the era that we are speaking of, and that the era that this prophecy mainly concerns, and that was the last days of the Jewish kingdom, at the last, 400, 500 years of that kingdom. So let's pick up where we left off. Daniel 11, verse 5. And the king of the south shall be strong, and one of his princes, and he shall be strong above him, and have dominion. His dominion shall be a great dominion. And in the end of years they shall join themselves together. For the king's daughter of the south shall come to the king of the north to make an agreement. But she shall not retain the power of the arm, neither shall he stand, nor his arm, but she shall be given up. And they that brought her, and he that begat her, and he that strengthened her in these times. But out of a branch of her roots shall one stand up in his estate, which shall come with an army, and shall enter into the fortress of the king of the north, and shall deal against them, and shall prevail, and shall also carry captives into Egypt their gods, with their princes, and with their precious vessels of silver and gold, and he shall continue more years than the king of the north. So the king of the south shall come into his kingdom, and shall return into his own land. But his son shall be stirred up, and shall assemble a multitude of great forces, and one shall certainly come and overflow and pass through. Then shall he return and be stirred up even to his fortress. And the king of the south shall be moved with choler, and shall come forth and fight with him, even with the king of the north. And he shall set forth a great multitude, but the multitude shall be given into his hand. And when he hath taken away the multitude, his heart shall be lifted up, and he shall cast down many 10,000s, but he shall not be strengthened by it. For the king of the north shall return, and shall set forth a multitude greater than the former, and shall certainly come after certain years with a great army and with much riches. And in those times there shall many stand up against the king of the south. Also the robbers of thy people shall exalt themselves to establish the vision, but they shall fall. So the king of the north shall come and cast up a mount, and take the most fenced cities, and the arms of the south shall not withstand, neither his chosen people, neither shall there be any strength to withstand. But he that cometh against him shall do according to his own will, and none shall stand before him, and he shall stand in the glorious land, which by his hand shall be consumed. He shall also set his face to enter with the strength of his whole kingdom, and upright ones with him. Thus shall he do, and he shall give him the daughter of women, corrupting her. But she shall not stand on his side, neither be for him. After this he shall turn his face unto the isles, and shall take many. But a prince for his own behalf shall cause the reproach offered by him to cease. Without his own reproach he shall cause it to turn upon him. Then he shall turn his face toward the fort of his own land, but he shall stumble and fall, and not be found. Then shall stand up in his estate a raiser of taxes in the glory of the kingdom, but within a few days he shall be destroyed, neither in anger nor in battle. Now, very enigmatic. You can recognize a few references to God's people, and then it's all the king of the north, the king of the south, and going by gender and so forth. So, like I said, very enigmatic, reading something about a future that hasn't happened without naming a lot of names, but just naming locations and a few references to God's people, the Hebrew people themselves, thrown in there. So who could make any sense of this at all? Well, nobody, basically. It's kind of like reading the Revelation at the end of the first century, shortly after it was written. It would seem like a lot of nonsense because you have nothing to compare it with, because those things being spoken of have not happened yet. But if we see the history play out, then we find out that it exactly fits, and we can name all the characters that fit into all these places because of the exacting references used in the Enigma that would definitely point to and must fit the history that followed. So history becoming the past. So let's see what our good friend Matthew Henry lies out for us. Like I believe this is one of the most exacting and best interpretations and of the history that was fulfilled after this prophecy was given to Daniel. Here are foretold, 1, the rise and power of two great kingdoms out of the remains of Alexander's conquests. The kingdom of Egypt, which was made considerable by Ptolemaeus Lagus, one of Alexander's captains, whose successors were from him called the Lagadae. He is called the king of the south, that is, Egypt. Well, that makes sense. Named here. And he gives us scriptural references in the text that we're speaking of, so you can check those out later, but if you didn't catch them or remember them, like I said, very enigmatic and hard to put together, but he gives us as the references as verse 8, verse 42, and verse 43. The countries that at first belonged to Ptolemy are reckoned to be Egypt, Phoenicia, Arabia, Libya, Ethiopia, etc. But the kingdom of Syria, which was set up by Seleucus Nicanor, or the Conqueror, he was one of Alexander's princes, and became stronger than the other. He had the greatest dominion of all, was the most powerful of all of Alexander's successors. It was said that he had no fewer than 72 kingdoms under him. Both these were strong against Judah, the affairs of which are particularly eyed in this prediction. Ptolemy, soon after he gained Egypt, invaded Judea and took Jerusalem on a Sabbath, pretending a friendly visit. Seleucus also gave disturbance to Judea. Number 2, the fruitless attempt to unite these two kingdoms as iron and clay in Nebuchadnezzar's image. At the end of certain years, about 70 years after Alexander's death, the Lagadae and the Seleucidae shall associate, but not in sincerity. Ptolemy Philadelphus, king of Egypt, shall marry his daughter Bernice to Antiochus Theos, king of Syria, who had already a wife, Laodice. Bernice shall come to the king of the north to make an agreement, but it shall not hold. She shall not retain the power of the arm. Neither she nor her posterity shall establish themselves in the kingdom of the north. Neither shall Ptolemy her father, nor Antiochus her husband, between whom there was to be a great alliance, stand, nor their arm, but she shall be given up, and those that brought her. All that projected unhappy marriage between her and Antiochus, which occasioned so much grief, instead of producing a coalition between the northern and the southern crowns, as was hoped, Antiochus divorced Bernice, took his former wife Laodice again, who soon after poisoned him, procured Bernice and her son to be murdered, and set up her own son Antiochus to be king, who was called Seleucus Callinicus. Roman numeral 3, a war between the two kingdoms, referring to Daniel verse 7 and 8. A branch from the same root with Bernice shall stand up in his estate. Ptolemaeus Euergetes, the son and successor of Ptolemaeus Philadelphus, shall come with an army against Seleucus Callinicus, king of Syria, to avenge his sister's quarrel, and shall prevail. And he shall carry away a rich booty, both of persons and goods, into Egypt, and shall continue more years than the king of the north. This Ptolemy reigned for 46 years, and Justin says that if his own affairs had not called him home, he would, in this war, have made himself master of the whole kingdom of Syria, but he shall be forced to come into his kingdom and return to his own land. That's verse 9. To keep peace there, so that he can no longer carry on the war abroad. Note, it is very common for treacherous peace to end in a bloody war. Roman numeral 4, the long and busy reign of Antiochus the Great, king of Syria, Seleucus Callinicus, that king of the north that was overcome and died miserably, left two sons, Seleucus and Antiochus. These are his sons, the sons of the king of the north, that shall be stirred up and shall assemble a multitude of great forces to recover what their father had lost. But Seleucus the elder, being weak and unable to rule his army, was poisoned by his friends and reigned only 2 years. And his brother Antiochus succeeded him, who reigned 37 years and was called the Great. And therefore the angel, though he speaks of sons at first, goes on with the account of one only, who was but 15 years old when he began to reign, and he shall certainly come and overflow and overrun, and shall be restored at length to what his father lost. One, the king of the south, in this war, shall at first have very great success. Ptolemaeus Philopator, moved with indignation at the indignities done by Antiochus the Great, shall, though otherwise a slothful prince, come forth and fight with him, and shall bring a vast army into the field of 70,000 foot, and 5,000 horse, and 73 elephants. And the other multitude, The army of Antiochus, consisting of 62,000 foot and 6,000 horse and 102 elephants, shall be given into his hand. Polybius, who lived with Scipio, has given a particular account of the battle of Raphia. Ptolemaeus Philopator, having gained this victory, grew very insolent. His heart was lifted up. Then he went into the temple of God at Jerusalem, in defiance of the law, and entered the most holy place, for which God has a controversy with him, so that he shall cast down many myriads, yet he shall not be strengthened by it, so as to secure his interest. For too, the king of the north, Antiochus the Great, shall return with a greater army than the former, and at the end of times, that is, years, he shall come with a mighty army and great riches against the king of the south, that is, Ptolemaeus Epiphanes, who succeeded Ptolemaeus Philopator his father, when he was a child, which gave advantage to Antiochus the Great. In this expedition he had some powerful allies. Many shall stand up against the king of the south. Philip of Macedon was confederate with Antiochus against the king of Egypt, and Scopas his general, whom he sent into Syria, Antiochus routed him, destroyed a great part of his army, whereupon the Jews willingly yielded to Antiochus, joined with him, helped him to besiege Ptolemaeus' garrisons. They, the robbers of thy people, shall exalt themselves to establish the vision, to help forward the accomplishment of this prophecy, but they shall fall, and shall come to nothing. Hereupon the king of the north, the same Antiochus Magnus, shall carry on his design against the king of the south another way. One, he shall surprise his strongholds, all that he has got in Syria and Samaria, and the arms of the south, all the power of the king of Egypt, shall not be able to withstand him. See how dubious and variable the turns of the scale of war are. Like buying and selling, it is winning and losing. Sometimes one side gets the better, and sometimes the other, yet neither by chance. It is not, as they call it, the fortune of war, but according to the will and counsel of God, who brings some low and raises other up. 2. He shall make himself master of the land of Judea. He that comes against him, that is the king of the north, shall carry all before him, and do what he pleases, and he shall stand and get footing in the glorious land, so that the land of Israel was, and by his hand it was wasted and consumed, for with the spoil of that good land he victualled his vast army. The land of Judea lay between these two potent kingdoms of Egypt and Syria, so that in all the struggles between them that was sure to suffer, for to it they both bore ill will. Yet some read this, by his hand it shall be perfected, as if it intimated that the land of Judea, being taken under the protection of this Antiochus, shall flourish, but be in better condition than it had been. He shall still push on his war against the king of Egypt, and set his face to enter with the strength of his whole kingdom, taking advantage of the infancy of Ptolemy Epiphanes, and the upright ones, many of the pious Israelites siding with him, in prosecution of his design. He shall give him his daughter Cleopatra to wife, designing, as Saul in giving his daughter Cleopatra to David, that she should be a snare to him, and do him mischief. But she shall not stand on her father's side, nor before him, but for her husband, and so that plot failed him. His war with the Romans here is foretold. He shall turn his face to the isles of the Gentiles, Greece and Italy. He took many of the isles about the Hellespont, Rhodes, Samos, Delos, etc., which by war or treaty he made himself master of. But a prince or state, so some, even the Roman Senate or a leader, Even the Roman general shall return his reproach with which he abused the Romans upon himself, or shall make his shame rest on himself, and, without his own shame or any disgrace to himself, shall pay him again. This was fulfilled when the two Scipios were sent with an army against Antiochus. Hannibal was then with him, and advised him to invade Italy and waste it as he had done. But he did not take his advice, and Scipio joined battle with him and gave him a total defeat, though Antiochus had 70,000 men, and the Romans but 30,000. Thus he caused the reproach offered by him to cease. His fall, when he was totally routed by the Romans, and was forced to abandon to them all he had in Europe, and had a very heavy tribute exacted from him, he turned to his own land, and not knowing which way to raise money to pay his tribute, he plundered the temple of Jupiter, which so incensed his own subjects against him that they set upon him and killed him. So he was overthrown and fell, and was no more found. 6. His next successor, there rose up one from his place, a raiser of taxes, a sender forth of the extortioner or extorter. This character was remarkably answered in Seleucus Philopater, the elder son of Antiochus the Great, who was a great oppressor of his own subjects, and exacted abundance of money from them. And when he was told he would thereby lose his friends, he said he knew no better friend he had than money. He likewise attempted to rob the temple at Jerusalem, which this seems especially to refer to, but within a few days he shall be destroyed, neither in anger nor in battle, but poisoned by Heliodorus, one of his own servants, when he had reigned but 12 years and done nothing remarkable. Roman numeral 5. From all this let us learn, 1. That God in his providence sets up one and pulls down another, as he pleases, advances some from low beginnings, and depresses others that were very high. Some have called great men the footballs of fortune, or rather, they are the tools of providence. 2. This world is full of wars and fightings, which come from men's lusts, and make it a theater of sin and misery. 3. All the changes and revolutions of states and kingdoms, and every event, even the most minute and contingent, were plainly and perfectly foreseen by the God of heaven, and to him nothing is new. 4. No word of God shall fall to the ground, but what he has designed, what he has declared, shall infallibly come to pass, and even the sins of men shall be made to serve his purpose, and contribute to the ringing of his counsels, to birth in their season, and yet God is not the author of sin. 5. That for the right understanding of some parts of Scripture, it is necessary that that heathen authors be consulted, which give light to the Scripture, and show the accomplishment of what is there foretold. We have therefore reason to bless God for the human learning with which many have done great service to divine truths. And I would say yes and amen to that. God has heathen authors penning history at his command to verify his own word, because God is sovereign in all things. So that takes us through to verse 20. So let's pick up here in Daniel 11:21. And in his estate shall stand up a vile person, to whom they will not give the honor of the kingdom, but he shall come in peaceably, and obtain the kingdom by flatteries. And some of you may notice, if you've had any schooling in dispensational futurist churches, that many of these prophecies are taken and applied to a yet future Antichrist character. But these are totally taken out of place. These are Jewish prophecies for the Hebrew nation of an era that is long past. And though the though prophecy and the judgments of God do rhyme time and time again, because men rhyme and sin over and over again. But you'll find in the details, you'll see the differences. Just like looking from one face of one man to a face of another man. You see a rhyme there. All have a nose and two eyes, a chin, and a couple of ears. But if you look at the details of the face, you can see the difference, that these are not the same prophecy, and they can be taken out of place by those that have designs on them, or a feat that they need to accomplish, such as to vindicate a certain man of sin. Let's jump back into the text here. Verse 21, and in his estate shall stand up a vile person, to whom they shall not give the honor of the kingdom, but he shall come in peaceably and obtain the kingdom by flatteries. And with the arms of a flood shall they be overflown before him, and shall be broken, yea, also the prince of the covenant. And after the league made with him, he shall work deceitfully, for he shall come up, and shall become strong with a small people. He shall enter peaceably even upon the fattest places of the province, and he shall do that which his fathers have not done, nor his fathers' fathers. He shall scatter among them the prey, and spoil, and riches, yea, he shall forecast his devices against the strongholds, even for a time. And he shall stir up his power and his courage against the king of the south with a great army, and the king of the south shall be stirred up to battle with a very great and mighty army. But he shall not stand, for they shall forecast devices against him. Yea, they that feed of the portion of his meat shall destroy him, and his army shall overflow, and many shall fall down slain. And both these kings' hearts shall be to do mischief, and they shall speak lies at one table, but it shall not prosper, for yet the end shall be at the appointed time. Then shall he return to his land with great riches, and his heart shall be against the holy covenant, and he shall do exploits and return to his own land. At the time appointed he shall return and come toward the south, but it shall not be as the former or as the latter. For the ships of Chittim shall come against him. Therefore he shall be grieved and return and have indignation against the holy covenant. So shall he do. He shall return and have intelligence with them that forsake the holy covenant. And arms shall stand on his part, and they shall pollute the sanctuary of strength, and take away the daily sacrifice, and they shall place the abomination that maketh desolate. And such as do wickedly against the covenant shall he corrupt by flatteries. But the people that do know their God shall be strong and do exploits. And they that understand among the people shall instruct many. Yet they shall fall by the sword, and by flame, by captivity, and by spoil many days. Now when they shall fall, they shall be helped with a little help. But many shall cleave to them with flatteries, and some of them of understanding shall fall, to try them, and to purge, and to make them white, even to the time of the end, because it is yet for a time appointed. And the king shall do according to his will, and he shall exalt himself, and magnify himself above every god, and shall speak marvelous things against the God of gods, and shall prosper till the indignation be accomplished, for that is determined shall be done. Okay, and I think the word here, determined, I think you could synchronize that with the Daniel 70 weeks prophecy, the 70 weeks that are determined. Just a note aside there. Verse 37, neither shall he regard the God of his fathers, nor the desire of women, nor regard any god, for he shall magnify himself above all. But in his estate shall he honor the God of forces, and a God of whom his fathers knew not, shall he honor with gold and silver, with precious stones and pleasant things. Thus shall he do in the most strongholds with a strange God, whom he shall acknowledge, and increase with glory. And he shall cause them to rule over many, and shall divide the land for gain. And at the time of the end shall the king of the south push at him, and the king of the north shall come against him like a whirlwind, with chariots and with horsemen, and with many ships. And he shall enter into the countries, and shall overflow and pass over. He shall enter in also into the glorious land, and many countries shall be overthrown. But these shall escape out of his hand, even Edom and Moab, and the chief of the children of Ammon. He shall stretch forth his hand also upon the countries, and the land of Egypt shall not escape. But he shall have power over the treasures of gold and silver, and over all the precious things of Egypt, and the Libyans and the Ethiopians shall be at his steps. But tidings out of the east and out of the north shall trouble him. Therefore he shall go forth with great fury to destroy, and utterly to make away many. And he shall plant the tabernacles of his palace between the seas in the glorious holy mountain. Yet he shall come to his end, and none shall help him. Again, very enigmatic, but our good friend Matthew Henry has ferreted out the history such as he can from whatever sources he has done, and I believe still brings together the best of all for us. So let's undo the mystery here. Let's have the enigma opened up to us. All this is a prophecy of the reign of Antiochus Epiphanes. He says the little horn spoken of before Daniel 8:9. I don't agree with him on that Antiochus Epiphanes was the little horn. But, yeah. So, not in 100% agreement, but it was Antiochus Epiphanes, a sworn enemy to the Jewish religion, and a bitter persecutor of those that adhere to it. Now, he may be right. I mean, I haven't really considered that Antiochus would be a division, because a little horn is a division of a greater horn. So could be a little horn, and I'll have to reconsider that maybe, or look into it and ferret that out, but not really important for the history that is already established here, because Antiochus is not the little horn of the Revelation, that's for sure. And that's where the dispute or the debate comes in at. So let's continue. Antiochus, a sworn enemy of the Jewish religion and bitter persecutor of those that adhere to it. What troubles the Jews met with in the reign of the Persian kings were not so particularly foretold to Daniel as these, because then they had living prophets with them, Haggai and Zechariah, to encourage them. But these troubles in the days of Antiochus were foretold, because before that time prophecy would cease, and they would find it necessary to have recourse to the written word. Now I see something else here that kind of rhymes, and the same thing is that Christian church does not have prophets, as the Old Testament church did, but we have one prophet. And what he's saying is this was written for the time that Israel had no prophets. So kind of like the Revelation was written for a church that has no prophets. But we have one prophet. And that is why the Revelation is the revelation of Jesus Christ, because Jesus is our prophet, priest, and king, after the order of Melchizedek. Okay? Not after the order of the Levites was he a priest, but also he is our prophet and our only prophet. And that's why we turn to the Word and try to understand these things. We can only look at the Revelation and say, this has been fulfilled, and we can follow it up to our day, what has been fulfilled, just as the Jews could, reading Daniel chapter 11, they could read it up. It was an enigma before that. Perhaps they recognized the king of the south referring to Egypt then, because Egypt was south of them, and the king of the north, obviously Syria. So perhaps they would have had that much recognition, and they could figure some things out in a way. Whereas if we read it, it's total confusion, unless you then read, get your understanding for someone who's actually done the work and studied it out. Because it's already been done, so why do it over again? You can take different interpretations from different people and meld them together, because there are others that have taken in hand to look into the history, as Matthew Henry said, to look into the ungodly history of men that perhaps recorded what history had happened, and compare them and side by side and compare them with the scripture, as Matthew Henry here has done. But I prefer to let Matthew Henry and others do that work, because with thousands of years having passed, that work's been done over and over again. And you can even put search in for Daniel 11 history in your internet browser and search it out, and you'll find a good variety of those. But anything that makes it about an antichrist in the last 7 years before Christ returns, I would leave those guys alone, because they have no idea what they're talking about. Anyway, that may offend some people, I guess, but speculation is speculation, and will never be anything but speculation unless and until it comes to pass. Continuing here with Matthew Henry. But these troubles in the days of Antiochus were foretold, because before that time prophecy would cease, and they would find it necessary to have recourse to the written word. Some things in this prediction concerning Antiochus are alluded to in the New Testament predictions of the Antichrist, especially Daniel 11:36 and Daniel 11:37. And as it is usual with the prophets, when they foretell the prosperity of the Jewish church, to make use of such expressions as were applicable to the kingdom of Christ, and insensibly to slide into a prophecy of that. So when they foretell the troubles of the church, they make use of such expressions as have further reference to the kingdom of Antichrist, the rise and ruin of that. Now concerning Antiochus, the angel foretells here, and another aside, when Matthew Henry here is referring to the kingdom of Antichrist, he is definitely, being an historicist himself, he is definitely referring to the reign of the anti-Christian papal church with its man of sin for 1260 years in the Revelation. He's not talking about a futurist dispensational antichrist speculation by any means. So, and because I'm afraid that some people being dispensationalists might read that into what he's saying, but it's not there at all, because Matthew Henry, dispensational futurism did not even exist in his day. Yeah, that one did really pop up and develop into a scheme until the 19th century, where it became fully developed with the invention of a pre-tribulation rapture. And that's kind of was the focal, or I don't know, the center of it was built around that fallacy. Roman numeral 1. His character. He shall be a vile person. He shall call himself Epiphanes, the illustrious. But his character was the reverse of his surname. The heathen writers describe him to be an odd-humored man, rude and boisterous, base and sordid. He would sometimes steal out of the court into the city, and herd with any infamous company, incognito, in disguise. He made himself a companion of the common sort, and of the basest strangers that came to town. He had the most unaccountable whims, so that some took him to be silly, others to be mad. Hence he was called Epimanes, the madman. He is called a vile person, for he had been a long time a hostage at Rome for the fidelity of his father when the Romans had subdued him, and it was agreed that when the other hostages were exchanged, he should continue a prisoner at large. Roman numeral 2. His accession to the crown. By a trick he got his elder brother's son, Demetrius, to be sent a hostage to Rome in exchange for him, contrary to the cartel, and his elder brother being made away with by Heliodorus, he took the kingdom. The states of Syria did not give it to him, because they knew it belonged to his elder brother's son, nor did he get it by the sword, but came in peaceably, pretending to reign for his brother's son, Demetrius, then a hostage at Rome. But with the help of Eumenes and Attalus, neighboring princes, he gained an interest in the people and, by flatteries, obtained the kingdom, established himself in it, and crushed Heliodorus, who made head against him with the arms of a flood. Those that opposed him were overflown and broken before him, even the prince of the covenant, his nephew, the rightful heir, whom he pretended to covenant with, that he would reign to him, that he would resign to him whenever he should return. But after the league made with him, he shall work deceitfully as one whose avowed maxim it is that princes ought not to be bound by their word any longer than it is for their interest. With a small people that at first cleave to him, he shall become strong, and he shall enter peaceably upon the fattest places of the kingdom of Syria, and very unlike his predecessors, shall scatter among the people the prey, and the spoil, and the riches, to insinuate himself into their affections. But, at the same time, he shall forecast his devices against the strongholds, to make himself master of them, so that his generosity shall be but for a time. When he has got the garrisons into his hands, he will scatter his spoil no more, but rule by force, as those commonly do that come in by fraud. He that comes in like a fox reigns like a lion. Some understand these verses of his first expedition into Egypt, when he came not as an enemy, but as a friend and guardian to the young prince Ptolemaeus Philometor, and therefore brought with him but few followers, yet those stout men faithful to his interests, whom he placed in divers of the strongholds in Egypt, thereby making himself master of them. His war with Egypt, which was his second expedition there, this is described. Antiochus shall stir up his power and courage against Ptolemaeus Philometor, king of Egypt. Ptolemy thereupon shall be stirred up to battle against him, shall come against him with a very great and mighty army. But to Ptolemy, though he has such a vast army, shall not be able to stand before him, for Antiochus's army shall overthrow his, and overpower it, and great multitudes of the Egyptian army shall fall down slain. And no marvel, for the king of Egypt shall be betrayed by his own counselors, those that feed of the portion of his meat, that eat of his bread, and live upon him, being bribed by Antiochus, shall forecast devices against him, and even they shall destroy him. And what fence is there against such treachery? After the battle, a treaty of peace shall be set on foot, and these two kings shall meet at one council board to adjust the articles of peace between them. But they shall neither of them be sincere in it, for they shall, in their pretenses and promises of amity and friendship, lie to one another. For their hearts shall be at the same time to do one another all the mischief they can. And then no marvel that it shall not prosper, the peace shall not last, but the end of it shall be at the time appointed in the divine providence, and then the war shall break out again as a sore that is only skinned over. Roman numeral 4, another expedition against Egypt. From the former he returned with great riches, and therefore took the first occasion to invade Egypt again, at the time appointed by the divine providence. 2 years after, and in the 8th year of his reign, he shall come toward the south, but his attempt shall not succeed, as the two former did, nor shall he gain his point, as he had done before once and again. For the ships of Chittim shall come against him, that is, the navy of the Romans, or only ambassadors from the Roman Senate, who came in ships. Ptolemaeus Philometor, king of Egypt, now being in a strict alliance with the Romans, craved their aid against Antiochus, who had besieged him and his mother Cleopatra in the city of Alexandria. The Roman Senate thereupon sent an embassy to Antiochus to command him to raise the siege, and when he desired some time to consider of it and consult with his friends about it, Poppaeus, one of the ambassadors, with his staff drew a circle about him and told him, as one having authority, he should give a positive answer before he came out of that circle. Whereupon, fearing the Roman power, he was forced immediately to give orders for the raising of the siege and the retreat of his army out of Egypt. So Livy and others relate the story that this prophecy refers to. He shall be grieved and return, for it was a great vexation to him to be forced to yield thus. Roman numeral 5. His rage and cruel practices against the Jews. This is that part of his government, or misgovernment rather, which is most enlarged upon in this prediction. In his return from his expedition to Egypt, which is prophesied of, he did exploits against the Jews in the 6th year of his reign. Then he spoiled the city and the temple. But the most terrible storm was in his return from Egypt 2 years after, prophesied of Daniel at verse 30. He took Judea in his way home, and because he could not gain his point in Egypt by reason of the Romans interposing, he wreaked his revenge upon the poor Jews, who gave him no provocation, but had greatly provoked God to permit him to do it. 1. He had rooted antipathy to the Jews' religion. His heart was against the Holy Covenant. He had indignation against the Holy Covenant, that covenant of peculiarity by which the Jews were incorporated, a people distinct from all other nations and dignified above them. He hated the law of Moses and the worship of the true God, and was vexed at the privileges of the Jewish nation and the promises made to them. Note, that which is the hope and joy of the people of God is the envy of their neighbors, and that is the Holy Covenant. Esau hated Jacob because he had got the blessing. Those that are strangers to the covenant are often enemies to it. 2. He carried on his malicious designs against the Jews by the assistance of some perfidious apostate Jews. He kept up intelligence with those that forsook the Holy Covenant. Some of the Jews that were false to their religion and introduced the customs of the heathen, with whom they had made a covenant, see the fulfilling of this, whereas it is expressly said concerning those renegade Jews that they made themselves uncircumcised and forsook the Holy Covenant. We read of Jason, the brother of Onias the priest, who by the appointment of Antiochus set up a school at Jerusalem for the training up of the youth in the fashions of the heathen. Of Menelaus, who fell in with the interests of Antiochus and was the man that helped him into Jerusalem, now in his last return from Egypt. We read much in the book of Maccabees of the mischief done to the Jews by these treacherous men of their own nation, Jason and Menelaus and their party. These upon all occasion he made use of, such as do wickedly against the covenant, such as throw up their religion and comply with the heathen. He shall corrupt with flatteries to harden them in their apostasy, and to make use of them as decoys to draw in others. Note, it is not a strange thing if those who do not live up to their religion, but in their conversations do wickedly against the covenant, are easily corrupted by flatteries to quit their religion. Those that make shipwreck of a good conscience will soon make a shipwreck of the faith. 3. He profaned the temple. Arms shall stand on his part, not only his own army, which he now brought from Egypt, but a great party of deserters from the Jewish religion that joined with them, and they polluted the sanctuary of strength, not only the holy city, but the temple. The story of this we have, 1 Maccabees, etc. He entered proudly into the sanctuary, took away the golden altar and the candlestick, etc. And therefore there was a great mourning in Israel. The princes and elders mourned, etc. And Antiochus went into the most holy temple. Menelaus, that traitor to the law and to his country, being his guide, Antiochus, having resolved to bring all about him to be of his religion, took away the daily sacrifice. Some observe that the word tamad, which signifies no more than daily, is only here and in the parallel place used for the daily sacrifice, as if there were a design liberty left to supply it either with sacrifice, which was suppressed by Antiochus, or with gospel worship, which was suppressed by the Antichrist. Then he set up the abomination of desolation upon the altar, even an idol altar, and called the temple of Jupiter Olympius. And there is much more that we don't really have time for today, but we should continue this tomorrow. I've only got halfway through the history of this last part of Daniel 11, so we'll have to pick it up here next time we come together. You're listening to me, Nicholas Arthur, and the name of this program is Cross the Border, my Bible study program. I hope that you're all enjoying it and learning something, and I hope it makes you open your Bible. You can get the same software that you see me using here at e-sword.net and download the program there. Make sure you also download Matthew Henry's commentary and whatever else you see that you want to use to compare your study of the scriptures. But when you download the program, you get the KJV Plus, which you see if I click on the plus tab here, it pops up with all the Greek and Hebrew numbers, and when you mouse over them, you'll see a little box will pop up, which is not showing on my screen, but it'll pop up on your screen. Or if you click on it, we're out of time, but it comes up with the Hebrew and Greek dictionary as you see there. But playing around with it, you can learn to use it. Okay, well, I've run out of time, so may the Almighty bless you all and keep you all as you travel on the narrow way that leads to life. I love you all, and I'll see you next time.